My name is Dana Vigran. I'm with the ICLE communications team, and I am supporting Mr. Yunus Arikan, who is our head of global policy and advocacy here at the ICLE World Secretariat, who will be making the presentation today. Just a couple of technical points up front. Everyone has been automatically muted as you join the call, and we'd like you to please remain so throughout the course of the presentations, at least. You can, of course, raise a hand if you'd like to make an intervention of some kind. Also, feel free to submit any questions you may have at any point throughout the webinar, either in the questions box or in the chat box as well. And I will be collecting those throughout the course of the webinar, and we will address them, time permitting, at the end of the presentation. A last note is that this webinar is being recorded, and it will be shared with all of the participants, as well as on icle.org and through our YouTube channels. The presentation will be shared, as well as the webinar recording. So I think that those are all of the points of business to start the call, and I will go ahead and hand over to Mr. Yunus Arikan.
Hello, thank you, Dana. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear colleagues. Thanks a lot for joining us in this first webinar of the year. As Dana mentioned, this would be a recap or debriefing about what we have, how we have been mobilized towards COP in Katowice, COP24, and what to expect in terms of in terms of 2019, based on the outcomes. In the agenda, we will try to go through how we also have mobilized throughout the year. Then we will spend some time in terms of activity-based engagements and announcements. We would focus on the outcomes, the official outcomes. We will spend most of our time in the LGMA agenda. And we will also have a brief overview of the 2019 UN Climate Summit as today's discussion points. In terms of I think it would be good to recap what we have done. And for those who are not familiar, LGMA is the abbreviation of the Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency, which is a legacy of the Agenda 21 major groups, 9 major groups. It was assigned in 1990 when 92 when Rio Agenda 21 was adopted. Local authorities was one of the 9 major groups, and because Climate Convention is one of the Rio Conventions, that is already automatically almost inherited to the structure of the governance or engagement practices of the UNFCCC. And in 95, when the first COP started, local governments were, along with business and industry groups and environmental groups, so there were 3 constituency groups: environmental NGOs, business and industry NGOs, and local governments, following the climate negotiations since 95. And our constituency had particularly accelerated its engagement starting from 2007 onwards, on the way to Bali and Copenhagen, and then, of course, Paris process. When we go through what we have done in 2018, we can easily catch up in the sense that we have hosted collectively 8 webinars in order to keep our constituency connected. We have circulated to the LGMA, the partners and members of the LGMA, and to the Friends of Cities, 60 mails throughout the year, and we have also provided daily mails from the negotiation sessions in May and December at COP24 from Katowice. Our constituency participated in 4 workshops in the UNFCCC's framework, mainly on capacity building and finance. We also have participated collectively to the Marrakesh Partnership Retreat and workshops, and 3 regional climate weeks. I think our constituency is one of the most regular attendees of these regional climate weeks, and we would like to continue in 2019 as well. There were 2 Talanoa dialogues, the official ones, one on 6th of May and one on 11th of December. throughout these days, we had more than 15 representatives of local and regional governments or partners or networks participating in the Talana dialogues in person. We have around 50 submissions, both in May and then in the December sessions. And one of the uniqueness of it is that collectively as a constituency, we have convened cities and regions Talana dialogues throughout the year in 40 countries and in 60 events, including those hosted by national governments or globally like regional climate weeks. One of the things that collectively we couldn't advance, one of the main weakness we had during the year is that we had a seat at the Warsaw International Mechanism Task Force on Displacement, but we couldn't manage to follow this process. This is one of those institutions that has a limited time span, and it was concluded in 2018 at COP24. Our hope is that we would continue to have dialogue with the Warsaw International Mechanism Executive Committee, so that for the next steps, we wish we could much better engage our constituency into this process, so that the weakness that we had achieved or seen this year should not be a barrier for the future activities. If we now go for our engagement at COP24, one of those challenges of this climate conference is that there is a number of now events taking place, and it's really hard to catch up who's doing what is the outcome, and what is the purpose, what is the differentiation. So this is, I think we have to live with that. This is the beauty of the climate conventions or the COP, that there will be more and more such innovative agendas, but we have to be careful, or we have to be still able to clarify what are we doing and what. And first of all, we should always recall that climate negotiation is a decision-making process, and we have the possibility to contribute by interventions, by statements, by inputs, and this is mainly done through the sessions that offering the slots. During the 2 weeks of the climate conference, we had mainly 5 individuals addressing these sessions. The mayor of Katowice, as the host of the COP, he had addressed the opening ceremony of the high-level segment. Here you can find the link, and when you receive this files in PDF form, you would also you will be able to access to the links as well. At the opening of the Talana dialogue, which is on the first week, it was the mayor of Tegucigalpa, the capital city of Honduras, and vice president of ICLE, who addressed the COP, and I think it was a good signal, because the next COP will be in Latin America. By the time this intervention was done, there was not a clarity on who would be the host, but now we know it will be Chile, but there will be a pre-COP in Costa Rica. So the Central American and Latin American and Caribbean countries will be much more actively involved. And having the mayor of the capital city of Honduras was, of course, a very good signal, and we were very happy to have Mayor Tito to be joining us and delivering a statement. At the closing of the Talana dialogue, we had a strong statement from the Committee of the Regions Environment Commission. Chair of the Environment Commission, Cor Lammers, addressed the closing of the Talana dialogue, and on the same night, it was really late in the night, it was around 12 o'clock or so, Magnus Berntsson, the regional minister of Minister of Environment of the region of Västra Götaland in Sweden, but also in his capacity as President of the Assembly of the European Regions, addressed and delivered the high-level segment of the COP on behalf of the LGMA constituency. In between, there were technical sessions, the closing and opening of some of those sessions. On behalf of ICLE and then on behalf of LGMA, Jason Huang delivered these statements, where you would find all of the texts of these statements are available. These links are the ones that are on the webcast, and so that you can watch later on. And in fact, this was the main purpose of this webinar, so that we can all track back, so that in case someone is interested, they can go back to these relevant pages or documents easily. Marrakesh Partnership, for those who are familiar, it's as an outcome of the Paris Agreement. Every COP presidency until 2020 is invited to designate a champion, and they are working with the Secretariat to push the action agenda. So they are having a bit more different, a much different role than the presidency of the COPs. They are mainly the ones who are getting in touch to the stakeholders, that is mobilizing their engagement, commitments, and in Morocco, in Paris, in Bonn, with Fijian government, of course, this was a huge agenda, and this legacy continued very well in Katowice as well. So what you can see, the Marrakesh Partnership had a series of events from first week onwards until the middle of the second week. There is a video that is capturing all these things. There was a yearbook released, including a summary from policymakers and good practices report. At the high-level opening on the 4th of December, Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, as a representative of a subnational government, joined this dialogue. The human settlements as a specific thematic group. The event was a collaborative effort of all the partners involved in the thematic group. It was held on the Friday, 7th of December. It was a 3 hours long event, integrated and multi-level climate action. We have a full webcast of the event, and there's an outcome document available. The Human Settlements Action thematic group also hosted a joint event, Cities and Regions Leading the Just Transition, in order to follow the negotiations and the theme of the COP. So there is also a webcast, which is a 45-minute event. The Human Settlements thematic group, especially the networks of local and regional governments, have mobilized representatives to other sessions, especially roundtables on SDG 8, sustainable consumption and production, land use and resilience, had seen representatives who had participated in these sessions. And each of them have their own outcome documents as well. These links are the webcasts mainly. Talanoa was a unique element of this year. As you remember, it was a legacy from Paris at COP24 in 2015. There was a decision to have a Talanoa dialogue, or at that time, the terminology was the facilitative dialogue, to take stock of how the NDC preparations are taking forward. But because of the rapid delivery of the ratification and entry into force, it turned out into an interesting shape. And with the Fijian presidency at COP23 in Bonn in 2017, also in taking into account inputs from stakeholders like local governments and municipal authorities, this one-off event of Talanoa Dialogue turned out into a year-round event. And throughout the year, there was enormous mobilization. It was an unprecedented engagement of stakeholders all around the world to the climate process and NDCs, bringing the NDC discussion much more to the grassroots and the national level and national ownership. This was also the opportunity where cities and regions can also participate. And the real facilitative dialogue took place in the COP, at the COP24 on the 11th of December. And throughout the day, there were numerous roundtables. It was around 15 participants in each of them. The presidencies and the champions managed very well, and the secretariat very well, how the selection, the diversity, regional, and in terms of also gender and participant-wise. So we are very happy. We had 8 representatives interacting in the sessions. There were possibilities of some language translations as well. So we had a diversity of local and regional leaders from all around the world, from north and south, small and big, who had participated in the sessions. In the links, you can watch these interventions at the right time, because each room had at least 2 sessions or sometimes 3 sessions of Talanoas. Therefore, this right moment is critical for you to find the right moment of our representative interactions. Since 2017 and at COP23, the UNFCCC, the UN Climate Secretariat, is also mobilizing much more systematically an initiative called Climate Action Studio. This is around 3 or 4 minute interaction, and the constituencies are invited to nominate 3 to 5 names, and all the participants are receiving the same questions, and the Secretariat is editing these responses, and it is released on the Secretariat's website. In the LGMA constituency, we have invited partners, and we have seen nice response. And again, here you can see from north and south, there is this diversity of speakers to the extent possible. There were some revisions in the speakers' names as well. But if you look at the interventions, at the official sessions, the Talanoa dialogues, and the climate action studios, I think we can comfortably say that as LGMA, we have achieved a huge diversity and the strength of inclusiveness, and all the different perspectives of our constituency was reflected through in-person participation to the sessions, and now these are all available on the web and recorded. In addition to this official, or let's say secretariat-led initiatives or presidency-led initiatives, of course, our constituency, like others, have opportunity of organizing side events. In Katowice, we had four main types. One is the one Katowice Climate Shift was on the 10th of December. It was a unique event hosted by City of Katowice. That was the moment where the local and regional governments culminated their gatherings in COP in a relaxed atmosphere. It was an opportunity also to hear interventions. It was the last Talanoa dialogue, and we also had received engagement of the European Green Capitals. There were official UNFCCC side events, both some of these UNFCCC bodies, but also the Action Hub and the UNFCCC managed side event slots. The LGMA constituency had a number of side events by leading members. This year's uniqueness was that pavilions, the delegation pavilions, had hosted a huge number of events, and that was actually one of the strategy we have conducted since the beginning of the year. We deliberately didn't want to have a cities and regions pavilion due to the technical challenges and logistical challenges, but instead we wanted all our members to diffuse into the national governments and speak there with the national partners, especially the national government. And here you can see a capture of the pavilions from Germany to EU, from China to Indonesia to Poland and Japan. The NDC Partnership Pavilion especially had hosted a number of series of local and regional governments, time for multi-level action. That was an opportunity for us to interact with the national delegations much actively. We believe it was really, I think, a good decision that we have combined with all our partners. As usual, there are events outside the COP venue, Sustainable Innovation Forum, Investment COP, Transport Day, LESC Dialogue, and then there are the leading ones. This was also more relaxed opportunities, and it was mainly to engage business and other partners to interact with our delegation leaders through a different setting in mainly dialogue sessions. Our announcements throughout the 2 weeks, there were a number of reports and announcements. ICLE had released the annual report of the climate registry. There was a synthesis report of the citizen register dialogues, and there was a video assisted with that. ICLE also made its climate neutrality commitment. During the negotiation, we released analysis of the evolution of the texts. We shared it with our LGMA constituency. We will also have interviews with our colleague Kai Embren from Nordic partners, which is available on YouTube, which is an opportunity to share our outcomes. C40 and GCOM mobilized resources to support the IPCC spatial report on 1.5 degree lead authors to deliver a spatial summary for urban policymakers. This was released on the Monday of the second week. It is particularly unique because of the challenges. As you can remember, the national governments had difficulties to welcome this IPCC's 1.5 report, and this summary for urban policymakers made a fantastic response, saying that local and regional governments are ambitious and they would like to support all these ambitious efforts as well. Energy for ST released its Regions Adapt report. Climate Change, one of the partners of the LGMA, who is bringing a diversity of partners in addition to local governments. They have released the first observatory report of the non-state actors. The European Green Capitals called for action through their network, a new initiative. It is the European Union-led process, and 2018 was the Nijmegen, and 2019 it is the Oslo. There were a number of mayors and deputy mayors attending these events, and they also wanted to bridge the climate action and environmentally sensitive and sustainable urban development to support each other. UN Habitat released a guide to address urban and human settlements at NAPS. During COP24 presidency, the Polish presidency also hosted an event that connects the Polish cities to the Nazca platform, as well as they released 44 cities adaptation plans. It is an initiative led by the Minister of Environment, and we had participated and endorsed and acknowledged their initiatives. This was one of the unique examples where multi-level collaboration can demonstrate how successfully actions can roll out, and I think in the next couple of months we could have more information about how these plans or Nazca initiatives are evolving. These are mainly the activity-based analysis, and we wanted to sit back and reading all the documents that comes from the presidencies and other some analytical assessments from our side as ICLE, as the LGMA. We perceive there are 6 major outcomes, and the first one is the most valuable and the most precious ones for us. This is one dedicated paragraph to the Talanoa dialogue. The Talanoa dialogue was a difficult process, but the more parties were engaged, the more they understood the value of bridging all stakeholders on board. The notion that the Paris Agreement, the success of the Paris Agreement, depends on an inclusive and ambitious agenda, and there the expectation was that this should then feed into the NDC process. The logic that, if you remember, NDCs, the intended national determined contributions, were actually prepared before Paris Agreement. Now, this NDCs, in fact, are not fully aligned with the spirit or the vision of the Paris Agreement. Therefore, there's a need to revise and increase the ambition. And one of the main reasons why we're asking for a revision of NDCs is that, unlike UNFCCC and Kyoto Protocol, in the Paris Agreement, there's a concrete reference to the local and regional governments. Paris Agreement recognizes engagement of all levels of governments in the climate action. Therefore, now from Talanoa spirit, we have a huge opportunity. The decision is very broad and very inclusive and ambitious. The decision invites parties to consider the outcome, inputs, and outputs of the Talanoa dialogue in preparing their nationally determined contributions and in their efforts to enhance pre-2020 implementation and ambition. This is a huge legitimacy for the cities and regions Talanoa dialogues, or any other city in the world who had been involved somehow in the Talanoa dialogue process, to go back to their national governments and then encourage them to open the doors for improving the implementation and raising the ambition of their national determined contribution. This decision is one of the biggest opportunities for us to be hopeful that on the way towards COP25 and especially 2020, we have now a legal base, we have a decision from the COP that we can now mobilize our resources, our relations, and in that sense, ICLE, as the focal point of LGMA, will of course get back to our partners and members. We will get back to all of you and we'll capture what are the immediate priority countries, what are the immediate topics we can work on, so that we can demonstrate that immediate implementation of the COP outcomes is taken up by the local and regional governments again. One important thing is that the paragraph, there is a couple of paragraphs to recognize and engage, recognize and welcome the 2019 UN Climate Summit. This may be a bit easy to say, but let's remember the 2014 UN Climate Summit was not even welcome in the COP decision in Lima in 2014. So these things are not very easy or not, let's say, given. So it takes time for negotiators to acknowledge such initiatives of the UN or leadership. So therefore, we are very happy to see such already a welcoming remark from the negotiations of the climate community to the UN Secretary General's initiative. This gives us again the resources and the legitimacy to be actively involved, and we will get back to the UN Climate Summit agenda once again. And let's recall the whole decisions, for example, do not make any reference to the global climate summit that was held in San Francisco. So these are the very nitty-gritty or small nuances that is impacting the success. Therefore, engagement on the 2019 UN climate is extremely important. One very, very specific outcome for us is that this was a decision during the year, but now the official COP also welcomes this. There is already a body called Standing Committee on Finance under the UNFCCC, which is led by, again, the governments and the Secretary of Staff. Every year, this forum is mainly focusing on long-term finance and long-term mobilization of resources for $100 billion per 2020, but also the disbursement of this resources and the finance. So during the year, there was intensive discussion with the Standing Committee on Finance, and they have decided to host the next forum, the 2019 forum, with a specific focus on sustainable cities. This is excellent news. This is giving us the opportunity that we can be innovative, we can be courageous, we can be positively reacting to this discussion so that we can bring our ideas. There have been so many efforts over these years, Citizen Climate Finance Leadership Alliance and all the other efforts. We are hoping now we can increase access of local and regional governments to the global climate finance and national climate mechanisms. If you look at the evolution since Bali, we were asking for 3 levels of progress. We were asking for recognition, we were asking for engagement, and we were asking for empowerment. In fact, we had achieved our recognition in the Paris Agreement. We have achieved our engagement through Talano dialogues and hopefully towards NDCs. And now the resources of climate action at the local and subnational level is coming up, hopefully through the finance forum. Therefore, it's exciting. The important thing is that the event, when and where, this is not clear yet. The UNFCCC is looking forward to inputs from the LGMA constituency. We're in touch with your partners and our partners. We are suggesting a number of ideas, and we will get back to that. But if you already have any events planned in June and August, let us know so that we can convey this to the UN climate process on finance. Katowice package, of course, has now like a 300-page document. Is full of details of mechanisms on adaptation, public participation, capacity building, loss and damage. There are numerous references to local and subnationals, and therefore we hope this would be giving us more resources and opportunities. Of course, it was not the best what we have asked for, especially in the NDC preparation. There were paragraphs referring to subnational engagement or subnational backgrounds. These are removed in the final decisions, but we are hopeful that it will come up, especially with the implementation of Decision 1 CP24. We can open doors. An important element is left out in COP24. This is Article 6 of Paris Agreement, which is focusing on sustainable development mechanisms. These are CDM, emissions trading, and the new concepts of non-market mechanisms. I think it was a wise decision. Otherwise, it was in the detrimental effect that the whole package was failing. So the now negotiators have the chance to focus on these very technical issues more, let's say, freely with their relaxed time. And there are rules that can enhance our engagement at the implementation phase. Therefore, we should be again sensitive and actively involved in this negotiations towards December 2019. During the year, during the COP, the presidency had announced a number of initiatives. The Just Transition was a declaration by heads of state. Electric mobility was a commitment through the Marrakesh partnership, and the forests was another declaration released at the ministerial level. Among all those, electric mobility is the one that we as local governments have been much more engaged, as well as the constituency. ICLE has endorsed a number of partners like SLOCAT and UTAP have also made some similar statements. We hope now the COP24 break is over. Hopefully, we will get back to the COP24 presidency and check how are they envisioning to roll out this electric mobility. Throughout the year, there may be numerous opportunities, and we hope the commitment now turns into action and supports our vision as well. Now, this is almost the last slide. Every year, at the beginning of the year, we are trying to track what is happening, when, and by whom. It is not easy. As you all remember, every year we are trying to find an easy way of describing what's going on, also visually presenting. Honestly speaking, there may be better displays as well. But what we were trying to share with this chart is that there are three main type of events that we are involved in. The first one, the red one, is the local governments and municipal authorities constituency-led initiatives. These are the partners or friends of cities or national events. Then there's a session, there's a stream led by the climate process, the UNFCCC. It's their sub-star committees or whatever. And then there is another stream of UN processes, which is the black ones. And so in each of these work streams, we try to list the events in two blocks, which is mainly the first half of the year and the second half of the year. In these text, we try to give the name or the abbreviation, the date, and the venue. If you look at this, the red ones are the highest number. And of course, there is numerous events that is not listed here, but we try to make as much as possible those who are relevant for decision making or those which have a global emphasis. And a bit larger list can also be developed easily, and we already have a lot of other events. But this was not helpful, but we just wanted to have very, very initial key events. We try to map this. If you can have a look at it, May is the peak in terms of our number of engagements, especially for the LGMA related events. And October, September is also similar like that. So these are the two main avenues. If we go through the LGMA lists, in February, we will have a global task force retreat in Barcelona. This will be an opportunity for an in-house discussion with all the partners. C40 is hosting the Women for Climate in Paris on 21st of February. Urban 20 will be hosted in Tokyo on the May 20. On the same dates, ICA and Heidelberg will be convened in Heidelberg with German Minister of Environment and a huge number of local government and local and regional government networks. R20 will host its Austria-Vienna summit in Vienna on the 28th of May. Resident Cities Congress will be held in Bonn in June 26 to 28, but a specific event may be scheduled on the 25th. G20 Environment Ministers meeting will be held in June in Nagona. There will be a special engagement on that event with the local and regional governments led by ICLE Japan office. Local Climate Solutions for Africa is expected to be held on the end of August or September. Korea in Seoul, there will be the annual International Renewable Energy Conference hosted by REN21 in October. That will also be possibly connected to a Mayor's Forum of Seoul, Mayor's Forum hosted by Seoul Metropolitan Government. In October, C40 will host their biennial World Summit or assembly in Copenhagen. And UCLG will host their triennial summit in November in Durban. As you can see, there are a number of organizations who are having their annual or biannual meetings. A number of initiatives are taking place new, like ICA or Urban 20. But there will be some regular events like Resident Cities Congress as well. So this is the structure of the LGMA agenda. When we come to UNFCCC, we have a retreat of the Marrakesh partnership in Bonn at the end of February. We hope to be participating. Every year there is a group of volunteering organizations who lead this process. In 2018 it was ICLE and Energy Forestry, and we will see how with the champions and the secretariat we can mobilize our engagement in the 2019 agenda. Africa Regional Climate Week will be held in Accra, Ghana in March, 18th of March. The UNFCCC will convene in Bonn in June, the last 2 weeks of June. As we said, ICLE is already submitted an action pledge for science policy practice dialogue. We hope we could come up with a new announcement on a specific event there. Latin American Climate Week and Asia Pacific will be in July and August. The dates and the venues are not announced yet. Finance Forum, we don't know, but it will be sometime in June and August. Pre-COP in Costa Rica in October, possibly. And Chile will host the COP25. We heard there were some rumors that the Chilean government may propose to host it in January, but we don't know how whether this is still an option or not. So let's wait for announcements from the UNFCCC. Other than climate, there is a number of UN processes leading up this year. The UN Environment Assembly is convening in Nairobi in 11th to 13th of March, 11th to 15th of March, including One Planet Summit, evolving from the Paris, the French government. In Nairobi, again, in the end of May, there will be the first UN Habitat Assembly. That's a unique body that is a result of the UN Habitat Governance decisions, a follow-up of Habitat 3. In July, in New York, there is this traditional high-level political forum going through the SDGs at the ministerial level. In September, there will be a climate summit, as we said. I will get back to that again. It is immediately followed by the high-level political forum by the UN General Assembly, which is at the heads of state level. And in October, India will host the desertification COP14. And this is the last slide, the climate summit. As you can see here, there is 6 main work streams: energy, climate finance, industry, nature-based, cities and local action, and resilience. The Secretariat, which is the Secretary General's office, has released a timeline. In order to be visible, we copied here the 2019 agenda. But as you can see in the last column, there is a vision that the climate summit extends its impact and engagement in 2020, because the whole spirit of climate summit is to encourage national governments to come to 2020 with more ambitious and renewed NDCs. Therefore, the announcements at the summit would not be the end of the game, but it will trigger hopefully a number of other processes. And it may not be easily visible here, but we're very happy to see the UN Climate Summit is also focusing to have a linkage to the Biodiversity Summit in Beijing in end of November or December in COP15. This is particularly important because biodiversity is the agenda that has the most innovative engagement models for local and regional governments and subnational governments. And just before COP24, they already kicked off a 2-year process to mainstream biodiversity into other sustainability events, especially SDGs and climate agenda. So these 2 years is an opportunity for us to be ambitious in climate agenda in terms of biodiversity and nature-based solutions, and developed the necessary basis so that 2030 agenda for sustainable development can be delivered and climate neutrality by mid-century can be materialized as quick as possible. This is the end of our presentation. We sincerely hope you were able to follow as much as possible the connections. It was a bit condensed, heavy, but I am looking forward to my colleague Dana to help me if there are any interventions or questions or comments. So thank you very much for your interest at this stage, and I give the floor to Dana.
Thank you so much, Yunus, for sharing, yes, very condensed, but very interesting and impactful content coming out of COP24 there, and looking towards the advocacy agenda this year as well. We'd like to open up the floor for questions, so please feel free to share any questions you may have either through the questions or chat box. Also, if you would like to share a question or a comment yourself, feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you so that you can speak to the group as well. So, great. I have a hand raised here from Philippe or Philip. Let me give you the floor.
Hello, this is Philip from ECLA European Secretariat. I have a question about the Finance Forum on cities, June to August, the event there. Could you maybe repeat or explore a bit on there what contributions could be from a European office perspective there in terms of presenting approaches or contributing with workshops or taking an active role there? Could you also, I got lost there where this will take place and who is organizing this. That would be nice. Thanks.
Then I see another hand raised by Monica. Maybe we collect her input as well, and then we respond.
Great. We'll take a couple of questions in a row here. So, Monica, go ahead. The floor is yours. We're not hearing you come through here, although I think. Hello?
Yeah.
Great.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Yes, we're ready for your question.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you first, Yunus. That was a great presentation. My question goes to the Talanoa dialogues. I understand that those which happened have received the recognition, but what about the future? Is there a commitment to continue?
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. Maybe we'll take one more question from Eva, and then Yunus, you can field those three. All right, Eva, the floor is yours. We're having a hard time hearing you, I think, Eva. Do you have a question that you'd like to share, either through audio or through the box?
Maybe we mute her and maybe she can get back, because Eva has been a very frequent participant of these webinars. She may easily type. There may be some difficulties at technical level today now there.
Great. Like, so Yunus, you can field those to Eva. Please feel free to send us any text questions you may have.
So let me respond to Monica and Philip. Thanks a lot for both of your questions. Let's start in the order of the topics. Philip raised the issue of the UNFCCC Finance Forum. Philip, you didn't miss too many things. First of all, the dates are not announced and the venue is not announced. We are in touch with the UNFCCC Secretariat, who is serving to the Standing Committee on Finance. It is a decision. It's a forum of national governments. These are the negotiators, and each year they pick up a topic, and this year it will be sustainable cities. There had been a previous engagement. C40 attended one of their events. James was there, and ICLEI and C40 now is acting as the focal point for local governments and municipal authorities to the design of this event. We have asked UNFCCC Secretariat to guide us. What is the mechanisms for us for ICLEI and C40 and LGMA to contribute in the design? You can imagine most of the Secretary staff is also coming back from the winter break. So we hope to have a discussion with them soon, this week or next week. This would give us the guidance of what to expect. But from our perspective, I assume there will be opportunities of hosting side events, depending on, of course, where this will be. If this event will be hosted, there will be definitely presentation of good practices or proposals. Our hope is that this will be an interactive session, so that as much as possible there will be a question and answer, so that we can share what we are expecting the national governments to design in the climate architecture. Therefore, we don't know too much, but I think you as ICLEI Europe, but also all the partners, should be starting to prepare yourself with proposals, innovative models, especially the success stories, how climate finance can better reach to the sustainable development through local and regional governments, how much local and regional governments can contribute to the climate finance. For example, during this year, we have heard a number of, since Paris Agreement, we are hearing some of the local and regional governments contributing to the climate funds. Some local governments are divesting their monies, and they are looking for appropriate investment sources. So these could be additional revenues for global climate funds, and in return we can receive more money from global funds and national funds to our work at home. So that is the goal. So we can contribute both in scaling up resources to climate funds, but also and mobilizing, channeling more resources to local and regional governments, much more robust financing mechanisms, much more, let's say, inclusive and rapid evolution of the resources. These are the type of things we should expect. We should be targeting to Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, or the Global Environment Facility, or the existing national and philanthropies, how they can engage with us. So these are exciting times for us, and it is exactly the right moment, because over these years we have really had evolved a lot in terms of credibility. ICLE had been developing transformative actions program. The Global Covenant have launched initiatives with European Investment Bank. A number of banks have already announced, like EBRD, opening more resources for local action. So this is the right moment for us to be ambitious and to be innovative and to be expecting huge outcomes. But let's stay tuned. We don't know too much of the details yet. Coming back to Monica, first of all, I'd like to also express our deepest appreciation to Monica's support. She was very, very instrumental in developing the agenda of the German pavilion at COP24. A number of us have been there, and we have really benefited a lot of her support. So Talanoa dialogues, the decision, Monica, yes, it is saying, referring to the existing Talanoa dialogues that has happened in 2018, but our interpretation, it says, it doesn't say necessarily the event-based outcomes, but I think there is synthesis report, there are proposals, there are ideas that can be applied everywhere in the world, or any country or any city can take the ones that are most relevant for them for implementation. Therefore, we from ICLE side do not feel we are restricted to only those Talanoa dialogues hosted by cities or regions or countries in the world in 2018. In 2019, this is providing us a background, a good basis and a good resources, but any country can build upon. The main thing is that how now they feed into the national determined contributions. National governments can follow the Talanoa format, which is no name and shame, no finger pointing, more, let's say, style-wise, a unique atmosphere. But they can also go back to their traditional workshops or conferences, closed or open. The logic is that every country in the north, in the south, in Europe, in Canada, in whoever has ratified Paris Agreement are obliged or morally requested to go back to their original NDC and to bring to 2020 a revised version. And it takes time, therefore they should start now. That is the whole essence. And what we say is that it is time to make the NDCs developed and implemented in a multi-level approach. And that is why this year in ICA is important. There will be huge discussions on multi-level implementation of climate actions. Therefore, until ICA in Heidelberg in May and beyond, we hope we could demonstrate concrete results of how these can be encouraged. We have friendly nations who have been doing this: Indonesia, Norway, Netherlands, Germany, Mexico, Colombia, the national governments in Talanoa dialogues in Africa, new initiatives from Japan, in Canada, in Mexico. So many countries are already announcing that they can come up with a revised NDCs. We as ICLE, as an observer or accredited observer to the NDC partnership, in the COP24 and the NDCP pavilion, we hosted a series of national dialogues from Tanzania, Rwanda to Korea and Japan. So we all look forward to building upon all these relations that was built so far and rapidly develop to an implementation phase. Therefore, we do not limit ourselves to the Talanoa lists, but we rather want to use the Talanoa outcomes, the synthesis report that we have produced as ICLE, the submissions that was presented to UNFCCC, the Talanoa synthesis that Secretariat has developed. Those are all the opportunities where we can use, regardless of whether they hosted the Talanoa before or not.
Great. Thank you so much, Yunus. We are closing in on the end of the hour, but I do think that we have time for one or two more closing questions. If there are any last points that anyone on the webinar would like Yunus to address?
I had one point, if nothing comes up. In this presentation, there's one thing that I didn't vocally address. This is the chart of the year, or the calendar of the year. This is referring to the European Parliament. The reason I'm highlighting is that over the past 2 years, since the ratification of the Paris Agreement, every year there was a test of the resilience of the Paris Agreement. In 2016, it was the presidential election in the US. There is a new administration who's not so much friendly with the climate agreement, and a year after, the president also announced that he wishes to withdraw, and it was a huge impact in the way the COP was convened and concluded in Marrakesh. In 2017, again, we have felt this, but in 2018, we had another case, which is the Brazilian federal elections. And again, this time it is an emerging economy from the global south, which used to be a very strong advocate of the Paris Agreement. Now there's a new president, and who is a bit more distant compared to the previous administration for climate action, in the least diplomatic, or the best diplomatic version I can use. In both of these countries, national or federal decisions, of course, are not only the only sources. There are local and regional governments in both of these countries. But the Paris Agreement in Katowice again showed that regardless of such an action at the national level, which is a bit backsliding, this didn't stop the Paris Agreement to advance. And I feel 2019 we will have a third test. This will be the third time the nations and the global community will test the resilience of the Paris Agreement, and this will be the European Parliament elections. The European Parliament is an important process for a number of reasons, but also the result, the final constitution, or the final composition of the European Parliament will shape how the European Commission or European Union will act in a number of policy actions or policy areas, including climate. This will be held in May, and let's hope whatever comes out of these elections, the global community and the European stakeholders are able to move forward with the Paris Agreement, and that is particularly important for European partners. Let's recall during the 2018, we had a fantastic mobilization from the Committee of the Regions, but at the national level, there were a number of global networks, regional networks as well. They had a number of Talanoa dialogues, but at the national level, very little Talanoas have took place. And at the national level, the NDCs are still not very much clear. There are progressive examples like Scandinavians, but there are others who are not very clear. So I think now this is the turn for the European stakeholders, European cities and European regions, European networks to be stepping up, to be bold, and to be showing the leadership. And this urgency of action, you hear every passing day a new type of civil disobedience or civil uprising is coming up in a peaceful manner. In COP, there was a huge interest from the initiative of the students. Greta was very charming and shining, and then she kicked off a number of also impacts. We are seeing a number of other initiatives. So the way these momentums will feed into the NDCs will be the next challenge and the test for Paris Agreement. This gives huge responsibilities to local and regional governments. This gives huge role for LGMA as a constituency and collective institutionalized advocacy channels. And therefore, we have to act much more closer together and help each other and make sure that Paris Agreement goes further. We ambitiously raise the delivery of the implementation, and we make sure that the citizens are confident that Paris Agreement is delivering results. So these are my concluding remarks. We will get back to you all on during the year with additional announcements and updates. And feel free to inform us, feed us any inputs from your side. And I thank you all for your interest.
Thank you so much, Eunice. I think that's a very important and kind of poignant analysis really to close on as we kick off 2019. So I'd like to thank everyone once again for joining us and remind you that the recording from today's webinar as well as the presentation will be shared with all of the participants. And of course, keep your eye out for upcoming webinars from our advocacy team here at the ICLEI World Secretariat. And thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Dana. Bye, everybody.